Hey everyone, what's up? It's KraDeNine here, and today we're going to be discussing things that Final Fantasy XIV can do better. This is going to be all my opinions, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and give me your 2 cents on what Final Fantasy can do better in, because the best form of getting any kind of improvement is by being constructive and having constructive criticism. Because otherwise, the game really isn't going to be improving, because again, no game is perfect, and the only way to get it close to perfect is by nitpicking at it and kind of seeing how it can get better, because that's the best way of improvement in my opinion. And if Square Enix ever on the off chance decides to watch this video, or if this video ever gets kind of like thrown into the light of day, again, I love the game. I've been playing it for over 20,000 hours. I think that these are kind of like more objective constructive criticisms about how the game can be better, because again, there's always something. So let's go ahead and talk about this again in no particular order. Dungeons. So I always found dungeons to be kind of like an amusement park, right? So you're going into the amusement park, you're going onto a ride, you do it once or twice and you're kind of done with it, right? You might want to go onto it for some other reason, like maybe getting some glamour in the game, or maybe getting like a triple triad card or whatever, like some kind of loot in the dungeon, right? But you're not really going back to a lot of them. You might have that one or two favorite dungeons that you might want to go back to just maybe listen to the music or something of that sort, but dungeons kind of, besides roulettes, don't feel like there's much purpose, right? And I'm not saying that they're bad. I love a lot of these dungeons, and I love going through them the first time round, maybe even twice, but I'm not really incentivized to go back there again besides glamour or maybe a triple triad card. So my solution is what they kind of tried doing in A Realm Reborn. Give us hard versions of the dungeons, right? Or maybe give us like the whole trial system where we have normal, hard, extreme, and savage. Maybe even unreal and, ultimate. Definitely not that far though for like a dungeon though, right? And people might be like, well, that's kind of like Mythic Plus in, World of Warcraft. And yeah, that's kind of the purpose. I feel like a lot of these dungeons are amazing, and they kind of like, there's so much more potential to be had here. And then the question is like, well, how do you implement that, right? Like, let's say we have up to extreme in dungeons, right? We have normal, hard, and extreme. Well, for one, get rid of the older hard versions of the dungeons, and maybe rework some of these dungeons a little bit to give us different pathways, right? So like, instead of going through pathway A, you're going through pathway B in hard mode and pathway C in, like extreme. It's something that, yes, I know it's going to add development time, it's going to add costs, but it's something that gives longevity to a dungeon. And it's like, well, what is the purpose then, right? Like, if I'm not running them in normal, why would I run them in hard or extreme? Maybe give incentives, right? Maybe give a title for completing the hard version or extreme. Maybe give a minion, right? These smaller rewards are more for like collectathon type of things, and people love that. I'm currently, up until, the end of Shadowbringers, am going through old content and trying to get as much of the things as I can, right? Mounts, minions, triple triad, like, I'm trying to go through the gauntlet as much as I can, and I'm also doing ultimate prog on the side. And if I had like harder versions of dungeons, I feel like I'd have more incentive to try to play more day by day for, dungeons. Because once you have every class to 80, roulettes aren't as interesting for more or less. Like, you could do it for poetics, you could do it for tomestones and, all that kind of stuff. But like, I don't have incentive to go do trial roulette anymore. I don't have incentive to go do leveling roulette anymore. Everything is level 80. So the option would be, give me a harder version or an extreme version of a dungeon. And again, like I said, the rewards don't have to be insane, right? You don't have to give me like a cap or something. Just give me like a title, right? Or some glamour. Maybe even like, yeah, maybe a dyeable version of that dungeon's glamour if it's not a dyeable version. Something simple like that gives me reason to go back. And again, just my 2 cents. You can fully disagree with that. I know some people don't want that to change, but I feel like it's something that Square Enix tried to do in A Realm Reborn, Heaven's Ward, and some dungeons in Stormblood, but kind of gave up on the whole thought process in Shadowbringers, which is fine, for story reasons. But I would still like to see a drop-down menu and being like, let me choose the version or the difficulty that I want to play it at. Right? And I guess you could say do it unsynced, but it's kind of not the same. So that's number one. Number two, kind of still in the whole like trial-ish thing in your duty finder, PvP. I don't care what anyone says. I think PvP is just really bad in this game. And I've been very objective about it. and I've tried playing it, and I know people like it, and that's fine. If you like it, don't let my opinion ruin it for you. But here is my gripes with PvP, right? As a PvP mode, there should be no reason why 3 people cannot kill a healer, if, or even 4 people if they're all bursting them down. That just doesn't make sense. In most PvP games, one person, like let's say a ninja, would be able to assassinate another person on the enemy team, even if they're going through like mild healing. In this game, you guys can all like ping the person, have a counter go down from 5 to 1, literally use all your abilities on like the healer or the range or the met, like whatever, right, minus the tank, and they don't die. Like, like it doesn't feel like it's strategy. It just feels like who's gonna get luckier with the bursts or the stuns. And it's like, well, you have to be very knowledgeable with the stuns. And yeah, you do, but like, I don't feel me clicking one button should be the difference between someone dying and someone living. It should be my combos, my ability to kind of weave things in, right? It shouldn't be based on like, did we get the lucky stun or not, or did 2 people stun the right people, right? And then the other like concern is we have one competitive PvP map, right? Like Rival Wings and like what was the other one called? I don't remember it off the bat. The larger scaled one, right? Rival Wings? Wait, no, that's not it. Either way, right? The bigger PvP modes, like they're meant for fun. I wouldn't really call them competitive in the slightest. And I'm talking about purely the 4v4s here, because I actually think the 64-man ones are fine. Is it 64? 16, 32, 4? Or was it 48? Whatever, the one with the 3 teams, right? I just think that the 4v4s in this game are horrendous. I know they're adjusting it for Endwalker to do a 3v3, but they have stated it's going to be more casual, and that's kind of like what concerns me, because like when it's more casual and you try to have a rank system with it, it just doesn't mesh well and you get aggravated for small things. I played League for so many years, and I can tell you right now, I've never had more aggravation in any type of PvP game up until I played PvP in Final Fantasy, where you can't talk to people, so you can't communicate, and then you're kind of just stuck on feeling like you as a member don't feel useful. It has to be all 4 of you. And again, from a PvP mindset, that does not make sense. I should be based on my skill level and what I can do, as opposed to can we all hit the stun at the right time. Again, it just doesn't work very well. And again, if you like the mode, that's fine. Again, this is just my perspective, my opinion on how I've played PvP in games. This does not feel like good PvP. And the best way for them to do it is to learn from other games like Blade and Soul, Terra, WoW, right? Like these other games, they have PvP and they were kind of like better for it. And Blade and Soul is a whole different beast, don't get me wrong. But it's, you can still learn aspects of it, right? And nerf healers, please. They're just broken in this mode. So that's kind of it. I don't really have a very constructive way to put this besides fix it in a way where it doesn't feel like I'm gimped as a player, and to where my contribution matters. And the only thing I can think of is maybe make the maps a little bit bigger, maybe give incentives for players to kind of just not really team up in the same way they do now, because again, the team up strategy doesn't make sense for me in the way it is. And yeah, if you guys might have a better PvP idea, let me know, because again, it's kind of hard for me to describe it as a MOBA player as opposed to a 3v3 standard player. So next thing is going to be transmogs, and I feel like this is an issue that they've, Yoshi has talked about. A lot of it is due to 1.0's coding, so this is nothing I'm holding them against, but something I really hope they fix sooner or later, even if it takes a whole like patch cycle. And I'm going to talk about that and what I mean about that in a second, because it kind of matters. Is that I think the Glamour system in Final Fantasy isn't terrible. However, it is not great. I like the idea that I get to put something in my storage and I never have to pay money to Glamour again. The one thing that WoW does really well is that you open up like a menu and you see every item you've ever even touched on your character. So that way you can just pretty much transmog or Glamour anything that you want in the game for a small fee. In Final Fantasy, you have to get the item, get the Glamour Prism, put it into a chest, and then you have to put it on a plate, or you'll manually apply each piece. But once you put it into your chest, it is free to Glamour. So that's kind of the bigger difference. Like, do you want it to be free or where you can always change it? And I think the Glamour Prisms are fine. So what I think they should do, and again, it's kind of weird because it's like there's no good solution to keep the current system. I would much rather pay Gil to keep glamoring my stuff over again, as opposed to having to find the gear, having to restrict my chest to 400 pieces. The amount of time I got to like 390 and I'm like, I gotta clean it out again, just sucks. And I don't want to keep storing things on my like retainer because like then you're wasting glamour prisms and then you're wasting like slots in your retainer. It's like a whole thing. And I'm just not. I think they need to do something. I think they really need to find a way to recode at least that portion of the game. My suggestion would be, you know, not obviously not for 6.0 or maybe even 6.1, maybe even when like they get to 7.0, I think it might be time for them to start changing the code in the game. I don't think it's easy. That's why I'm not suggesting they do it in the middle of like a patch cycle, like in the middle of Shadowbringers or the middle of like Endwalker. Maybe for the next expansion, just be like, hey, this expansion is going to be purely focused on changing the base of the game. We're going to be changing the coding of the game, a lot of quality of life things. So there's not going to be as much content for 7.0, but 7.1, yeah, we have the storyline and everything. I think that would be fine. I know a lot of people might be like, well, that's kind of like not the point of an expansion. It's not going to sell well, but you get to keep the players who are like really disgruntled with a lot of these older systems, because again, this might be like, well, it's only a transmog system, it's not that big of a deal, just increase the slots from 400 to like 800, and that's a temporary solution, but guess what, it's gonna keep growing and growing and growing, and that's why I'm okay with them taking a patch cycle or even an expansion cycle to fix a lot of these older issues, especially like this whole glamour thing. It's a mess. And temporary fix, give us like 200 more slots. I mean, that would be nice, to be honest. So the next thing is going to be more for like the newer players. Obviously, if you're level 80 on everything, this does not apply to you in the slightest. Just keep that in mind. The next two things are going to be more things that they should kind of enforce, in my opinion, or kind of do. And the next thing is going to be allowing people to try out classes up until, whatever the cap is at that time, 80, 90, 100, whenever that's going to be. Because there's times where it's like, well, all you have to do is equip their weapon and start leveling them up, right? But I don't want to invest, and again, it doesn't apply to me and a lot of other people because I already have everything at 80, but I feel like some players don't have interest at all in doing that, right? Some players just want everything to be like level 1, they want to focus on 1, maybe 2 classes. So what is a good way to kind of make them interested? Let them try out the classes in like maybe a map, like maybe introduce one singular map with a test dummy and just give them every ability, let them test it out. And I can hear people screaming, well, that's kind of what Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High does. But yeah, but you kind of need to do content in that process, and not everyone will be interested in it. And it doesn't cap to the max, caps at 70, because Heaven on High is at 70 and Palace of the Dead is at 60 at most. And I think that this would be a good way to just be like, you go to your class instructor, right, your job instructor, and you go like, hey, can I please test out the weapon and try out how the class plays? And then there you go, you just have every ability, you try out level 90 abilities. That would be a really cool way to introduce players to new classes without forcing them to level it up, and they might not like it. And WoW does this again. I like to do the comparisons to WoW because number one, a lot of new players coming from WoW, so they understand where these perspectives are coming from. And number two, it's the biggest MMO on the market besides Final Fantasy XIV that people can draw comparisons to. And I'm not saying either game is better than the other, they both have their pros and their cons. Obviously, I prefer Final Fantasy XIV. If you prefer WoW, that's on you. Again, no hate or disrespect, just my personal opinion. And I think one thing that WoW does well is that when you start a character, it lets you try out the class. So if you want to try Arcane Mage, which is their version of Black Mage essentially, you get to try it at level 60, the cap or whatever it is at that time. And it's like, oh, cool, you're on a ship, you get to try these abilities out. They give you a little tutorial. If you like the class, you continue. If you don't, you just make a new class, right? Really cool idea. And I think Final Fantasy can implement this even better. Just going to the job instructors and being like, hey, I'd like to try out your bow, please. May I please be a bard for about 5 minutes to test out the class abilities? Really cool way to introduce people to new classes. So that's something I think they should add, because again, not everyone wants to level up everything, and not everyone wants to kind of go on a leveling spree in Palace of the Dead just to find out they don't like it. So again, a 5-minute like test that they can do at any time they want. My opinion, perfectly acceptable. And even maybe have the job instructor allow you to learn the class, right? The rotations. That would be really cool, Because like, what if I haven't played Monk since like Heaven's Ward and I'm level 80 on Monk now, and like, you know, I haven't played it and they changed the how the class works. Maybe go to the job instructor and he's like, well, here's his changes, here's how you can play the class now, here's the rotation. That would be insanely cool in my opinion, because then I could like learn Monk again, because I haven't played it since like Stormblood, and I honestly leveled it through like Bosja, so for me it's like I don't remember what the hell I have to do. I just use AoEs all the time. So the final thing I want to talk about, in my opinion, because this is a pretty big thing, is please, Square Enix, this is a minor thing that you can do that will help the game immensely. Lock dungeons if you do not have a job stone. The amount of times I've seen a gladiator at level 50 content and they don't even know Paladin exists. It's not that they didn't want to do it because they're like, oh, gladiator sounds cooler. They just didn't know paladins were a thing, because the job quests are not enforced at all. The only time they're enforced, technically speaking, is Shadowbringers to continue with the story. And even then, that's a whole different scenario. Like, please, Square Enix, I beg of you, make job stones like a required thing post level 30 content. If you want 35 content, because I know you get like an ability at like level 34 or something. So post 35 content, make it a requirement to get a job stone. And people are gonna be like, well, that's restricting the game even more. No, it is not restricting the game anymore. It is making it better, because then people get more abilities, making content faster, and having people not really burn out, being like, I'm pressing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's nothing else to press. Well, do you have, you know, the job advancement unlocked? No. Well, there you go. You could have had 4 more abilities by this point. And it's such a small thing, but the amount of times, like I said, that I saw level 50 people with their base class is like nuts. And I try to make this a big point in a lot of my videos. Please do your job quest line if you haven't. It's really important. But guys, a bit of a longer video today because I feel like these are more important topics and I didn't want to like gloss over them in like a 2-minute video. It's gonna be a bit more of an edited video as well, so that's kind of nice as well. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate your support. It's been fantastic recently with the likes and the comments, and I love reading them. I love replying to them. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Probably gonna be Monday, hopefully gonna be Monday. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take it easy, stay safe, and as always, make sure you subscribe. Why not? I never say it at the end. So subscribe! Bye!